So I'm going to say good afternoon. Do I have my time zones right?
Yeah, you do. I'm in Colorado, so I just barely afternoon here.
Originally from Colorado, when did you move back?
So I grew up in Wyoming and then I came to Colorado for college and a quick stint in New York, and then I've been here ever since, but I'm spending less and less time here. I just got back from LA yesterday, so I'm kind of bouncing around on either coast, but Denver's a great place to be, in the middle.
Got it. Sorry for that factual error about Colorado versus Wyoming, but when I was a kid and people were talking about the middle of nowhere, they'd be talking about Wyoming probably or Montana. And
Yeah.
nowadays, tons of celebrities, tons of things being filmed out there. When did you start to see it change for Wyoming?
I don't know much about the film industry in Wyoming at all. I know a fair bit about Colorado. We just got Sundance. So I don't know how
Yeah.
that will impact film production here. I just came off a film, big budget film that shot here in Colorado. It's pretty rare because we don't have the incentives that like New Mexico has, Utah. We're kind of surrounded by states that have better incentives, but maybe that'll change. Wyoming, I surprisingly don't know much about. I haven't lived in Wyoming for a long time, so I don't know much about the film incentive there. I know Longmire, which took place in Wyoming, was all shot in
Yeah.
New Mexico. So
Yeah.
I don't know. That would be a cool place to get big incentives. Boy, I would scurry back there to shoot whenever I could.
Most shows you watch these days, wherever they say the setting is not where it's
Oh
filmed.
yeah,
I think that's the reality. It's not just Canada anymore, it's everywhere.
right,
But
right.
you said big budget movie, but when we were first talking about doing this interview, the new project was Pulse. But when we go through new projects, there's Mountainhead, Madison, Last Day, Man Who Changed the World, etc. So you haven't had a very quiet 2024 or 2025, it seems.
It's been crazy. It's been crazy since like the first minute of 2024. It's been great, like crazy in a good way. Super busy, and I'm
Right.
super grateful. Just fundamentally grateful. Yeah.
But it's not like there's one genre or one location. So I'm assuming you're making a lot of rewards points earnings happening for hotels and flights.
Yeah, yeah. It's starting to get cheaper to travel because I've traveled so much. So it's great. It kind of perpetuates itself, right? Yeah.
Sure. So what is the new project? Or, you don't have to name anything that's under embargo, but what's the latest and greatest thing that we're allowed to know about?
Well, I can't say anything in detail other than jump on HBO tomorrow night. I think it's 8 p.m. 8 p.m. Eastern time and watch Mountainhead. So that is Jesse Armstrong's directorial debut for a film. He's written a lot. He wrote and created Succession, which you may
Hmm.
have heard of.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. And so he wrote this film, just was inspired, wrote it quickly, got it produced. He's got such a network of producing a really high quality show for a long period of time that allowed him to put this together quickly. So they shot in March and very early into April, and it's dropping on Saturday. So that's how fast it is. But
Yeah.
they just had the premiere last week, and I was all slated to go. I had my reservations and everything, and then I booked a really cool project in LA. So I've been the last 10 days in LA shooting. So it's kind of like Sophie's Choice. I had to give up the premiere and get out to LA and shoot this cool one that I cannot say a word about. I can't say a
Sure.
word about, and I'm dying. But yeah, Mountainhead, I have it on good authority that it's really good. So that was a fun.
I'm I'm glad to hear that. Big Succession fans in this household. When you find out, hey, I'm working with Jesse, do you have to do a crash course on, okay, here's everything he's done? Do you do any kind of prep beyond the
Oh
reading the
yeah.
script?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You do everything. You just take every clue you can get. And I thank goodness I watched Succession rabidly and loved it so much. And it was so crazy because I did another quick interview like this maybe 2 months before I got that job. And at the end, the interviewer asked me if, okay, wave a magic wand, who would you want to work with? And I really hadn't thought about that because everybody seems interesting to me right now because I'm just kind of getting going. But I thought about it, and the first thing that came to my mind, I said, I would love to work with anyone who has ever had anything to do with Succession. And so when I got that script, it didn't say who it was and
Right.
who wrote, who directed, nothing. It was all very cryptic. But I read the script and I was like, oh, this sounds like, that style of writing is unmistakable. And so I really went at the audition pretty hard. I really, really dove into that. And then yeah, it was great. So I didn't have time. It was pretty quick turnaround, and I was in production on the film in Colorado when I got it, so I was already pretty busy.
Right.
I didn't have I needed to do a Jesse Armstrong Film Festival, right? And go watch all the stuff that he's written other than Succession, because he's been very prolific. He's an interesting guy. It was really fun to work with him.
Not that this is the Succession interview, but I waited to read up on the cast until after I watched Succession, and I didn't realize that the actor who plays Kendall is entirely method.
Yeah.
And in turn, got super hurt during different parts of making that. So I was curious about your process, how much prep you do versus if you were secretly a Meisner person and then you can read the room and that's what you do as your prep.
Yeah, at the level, that's a really interesting question. And it comes into at the level where I'm working, I tend to, and I will take it all day long. I tend to work smaller roles in higher and higher profile projects, this being the pinnacle, and then this one I just shot also.
Hmm.
So 90% of the job, I think, is not coming in with your own agenda, like this is my process and this is how I work,
Right.
but coming in and sending out all the feelers, from the beginning, from like you said, from when you get the script, from the audition, from anything in the wardrobe fitting, anything in hair and makeup, talking to people, and then you get there and you have to like magically evolve into whatever that project is. So it's really
Right.
about being a chameleon, being ready to fit in, being ready to play, being open to suggestion, being will, you're gonna you might take a stab at it and you might get it wrong, so being willing to say, okay, that was a bad guess, but tell me what to do, and be adaptable and be flexible. So I suppose if I had a role where I really had to dive deep into an accent, or I just did the film in Colorado, I had a big, very, very huge cry scene, like massive sobbing, wailing. And that I had to stay a little bit closer to that character behind the scenes. I had to stay
Hmm.
less chatty, a little less sociable, a little more contained on that day that we were shooting that. Because that's a deep well you're gonna dive in, and you can't you don't want to be running 300 miles to get to that well. You want to kind of be standing by the well. So I think it's a different world at my level. So I look forward to having the opportunity to having more responsibility and more of a load, but I don't know what I would be like. I think I'd have to wait and see, see how that plays out. So
When you say small role, I mean, you also have to have the perspective. We, as the fans, have no idea how much was cut from the
yeah,
script to
yeah.
the episode. So sometimes somebody could have what they thought was a lead and could turn into an accidental cameo. So benefit of the doubt right there.
Yeah, yeah. I just heard a interview with Adrian Brody where he's talking about a film he did that he shooting somewhere like really afar. I don't know, like Turkey or something, somewhere really far away.
Sure.
Away from home, really isolated, really, really immersed. All this prep time, like military camp and all this stuff beforehand. He thought he was the lead, and when it came out, he was an incidental character. So that can happen. That can really happen. Hasn't happened to me yet, but that would be
Sure.
crazy. Yeah, so I was not shot as a lead in Mountainhead and ended up with a small role. I was given a small role, and then the premiere happened, and I have word that I'm in it, and so I think my stuff is still in. So
So SAG benefits will prevail. Okay, cool.
yes,
And then the other kind of role that you would have, for example, MacGruber,
yeah,
is that an easier set to be on? The reason I'm curious about that is usually I find the genre that we're seeing as the final cut is usually the exact opposite vibe. So in other words, the horror films are usually laugh fests. And the dramatic films, people are just happy the second they say cut to laugh unless there's a lead who's method. But then I find that the comedies are actually accidentally serious in production because people are deadpanning.
well, and sometimes, comedy takes a lot of focus, like they
Yeah.
say the best comedic actors are also really good dramatic actors. Like it is,
Yeah.
Not, it's a misconception that comedy is easy and lighter, and it takes some focus. And MacGruber was interesting because I auditioned for a different role and got
Hmm.
cast in the role that I got and didn't have a lot of prep time. And there was room for improvisation. And when things are kind of loose like that, and there were like 200 extras on the day I shot, and there are a lot of moving parts, and there's like always a timeline. That one was really a live wire. Like I really felt on the, not on the hot seat, but I felt like that was a get going, get going. But then there was some downtime. I ended up standing around laughing with Will Forte for a good chunk of time on that shoot. He was so lovely. And so it was really fun. But when we were working, it was, super serious. So that one I came in with a fair bit of like, oh boy, here we go. I didn't even audition for this. What are we doing? What's happening? That one was a little bit crazy. So that happened.
It doesn't read that way when you're watching the series.
Yeah,
So
yeah. But they're having a
compliments.
blast. I can tell you that crew, the main crew, Kristen
Hmm.
Wiig and Will Forte and all the leads, they were having a ball. It was just like getting to make stuff with your best friends. And they had a timeline and they had a budget and they had to get things done at a certain time. But man, they were having fun for sure.
And then aside from all these credits and the prep and all that, what's your main hobby when you're not busy with auditioning and then being on set?
Yeah, I've got two kids, two grown kids, and one of them is about to have a baby. So
Congratulations.
doing that.
Nice.
So I got a lot of family stuff. I got a lot. I live in Colorado, so I'm a big outdoorsy person. I love to be outside. I love to hike. I walk my dog. I have a day job. I still work a day job. I run a business in Denver, so I've got, kind of a good balance right now of
Wow.
yeah, well, and I feel like there's a shift on any given day on which I'm doing more. And if the last 15 months have been any indication about how it's going to go moving forward, it might really start shifting. But no, I have a pretty good balance. I think Colorado is a good, really grounded place to live. So I get to
Hmm.
really have my life. And again, like working at this level, I don't even tell people I do this really in my day-to-day life. So I get to have this like every now and then someone from my day job will call and say, am I insane or did I just see you on Pulse? And depending on the day, I might
Sure.
say, I don't know what you're talking about, or I might fess up. But yeah, so I kind of keep a nice balance. Yeah.
That is fascinating that you were grounded in that sense and can hold down the day job and not have the ego while doing things that aren't the arts. Was it the long-term plan to always have acting as a side hustle, or did it evolve that way?
Well, I started out wanting to do it for real, but I come from a family where it was thought to be fun, but you don't do that for real. Like go get your degree in math. So I
Yes.
did. So I kept getting distracted away from it, but then lo and behold, I'd find my way into professional theater or when I got divorced, I started a business training attorneys from an acting standpoint. Like everything is, I've always kept acting going. But I was brought up with this core belief that you can't do it for real. It's not a real thing that you do. But I kept getting enough feedback and enough
Yeah.
opportunities and meeting people. And then I think the Me Too movement helped. Like what I did get into an MFA program when I was right out of college, and I just didn't have a great experience. It felt very felt like there were things you needed to do to get ahead that I wasn't willing to do. I don't know. It wasn't a great time to be a 22-year-old woman in New York City in the mid
Right.
80s trying to make it in that field. So some of the things that I had been taught were like, oh, well, that sounds right. So I just kept kind of putting it off. And so finally, when my kids were grown and gone, I had my kids pretty young. When they were grown and gone, I was like, well, what do I want to do? And there was no film and TV opportunities really here in Colorado. So I just started auditioning in New Mexico in person, and it's just been a whirlwind since then. So I feel really happy with the way it ended up turning out. I think I would have had a hard time going to LA when I was in my 20s for a variety of reasons. So now I just feel grounded and life is good, and I can come solve a problem for someone on a day when I'm shooting something, but it's not my whole life. I'm not getting my whole identity or sense of self-esteem from it, and that probably translates well in auditions and stuff. I just feel like I'm lucky to be there, happy to help. And then there are more and more roles for women my age. You're starting to see women in their 40s and 50s all the time. And it's like great because we're a pretty interesting bunch.
Sure. So if I can project on what I just heard, because you're not desperate,
Yeah.
it's not as much of a slog if you don't get the role or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, and I knew that early on. I knew that it had to be joyful and fun for me. That's one of the
Sure.
reasons I left this MFA program. And I thought I don't want to. I supported myself for about 10 years in Denver as an actor, doing theater and doing, and it's piecing it together, man, just piecing it together. And there were a couple times where I would go in to the audition for some, commercial for a casino or something. And in the back of my mind, like, oh my God, if I don't get this, I don't have rent. And it was a horrible feeling.
Yeah.
And so I only did that for a little while and had a lot of other sidelines, kind of regular things that I put into place, acting related, but regular to keep things going. And then I decided to make my living a completely different way after those 10 years because it was just exhausting and I didn't
Yeah.
want to be gone night times anymore. I wanted to see my kids' games and shows and concerts and all that stuff. So it was nice to have a little bit of financial support from my other business. And then I can go audition and just, happy to get it. And if I don't, what's the next one? What's the next one? That'll be fun.
Wow. And the last question I have for you, and I don't know if this gets a 2-second answer or a diatribe, but
Okay. Well, you can just shut your computer if it gets to be too long, just like
fair. Okay. Is the term character actor fine with you? And or is it fine to call you a character actor, or is that an outdated or pejorative term? Because
yeah.
I don't know.
That's a really great question, and it is a longer conversation. In fact, Adrian Brody, again, I heard a really interesting conversation where somebody asked him about being a character actor, and he was like, "What is a character actor? What is that? Is it because you have an atypical look?" I think what's happening is because the standard for what a lead looks like is now completely changing. Character actor was coined back when the leads were the four women and the four man who they just matched up as love interests, and then everybody else circuit, the crazy sidekick and the wackadoodle and the bad guy and
Yeah.
the whatever. But so character actor was anybody other than Jimmy Stewart and Katharine Hepburn and whatever, like the standard typical look. But now we have shows with leads of every type, every age,
Yes.
every gender combination, every ethnicity combination, that. And so I think character actor is going by the wayside unless, like, I heard Christopher Walken interviewed once and they said, what's something you seem to be able to do anything. What can't you do? And he said, well, I guess I really just can't play the normal dad, right? So maybe there's, if you are always the one that comes in,
Yeah.
just is crazy and like really atypical and really there's nobody else like you, then maybe you can carry that character actor uh moniker with you. But I think it's going by the wayside. But that's a really good question. It's a really good question.
That's a really great answer, Amy. So, what I've learned today, great things are coming, some of which you can't talk about. So, as a result, what's the best way to find out when it's time? Is it Instagram?
Yeah, my Instagram, you can follow me. It's open for now. I've had no problems with it at Mac Amy. And then my IMDb is always as current as I can talk about, and I have a lot of up and comings there. And then yeah, you can always just Google, but Mountainhead drops. I'll just pitch that one more time. I know this wasn't set up to pitch that, but I'm so excited to see it. I didn't get to see it, so I'm with everybody else when it drops on Saturday night. So that's going to be a really fun one to see.
Paltrocast.